Good morning, everyone. Before we start, just a couple of quick items. First, can I ask those of you here in person, please take your phones out, make sure that they're silenced or turned off. And those of you watching by Zoom, if you can please make sure that your microphones are muted. Those of you who will be getting up to speak, you are welcome, if you're comfortable, to take your mask off. We'll be wiping down the microphone between speakers. Also, in the interest of safety, when we go to shovel earth a little later in the service, we will have a can of hand sanitizer, and after you shovel, we'll give you a spray of that as well. I believe that there are 6 people who were asked to serve as casket bearers. If I can have you join us at the hearse right now, I thank you. You're good.
The eye never has its fill of seeing. Young or old, it's not on. it?
It seems it said it's on. Maybe you muted it. There you go.
Like this.
It's working now. Everyone can hear. Good. The eye never has its fill of seeing. Young or old, those who depart this life never see enough of this world, never complete their task, never cherish their loved ones enough before they are called home. How they yearned for yet another respite from the final summons, and how we yearned to have them close to us for yet another challenge in our lives, yet another joy, yet another precious moment together. Today we mourn for David Shneer, a loving, compassionate, kind, and intelligent trailblazer who enriched the lives of countless souls in his short 48 years. It is nearly impossible to imagine a world without his smile, without his warm hugs, without his voice and his listening ears and encouraging words. It is hard to come to terms with the reality that he is gone. David was one of a kind, the kind of son that Jim and Diane couldn't help but fell over. A caring brother to Robert and Lonnie, uncle to Emmy and Kyle, a loving husband to his Bashir to Greg, with whom he shared many wonderful years. David understood that love is a fountain. The more you give, the more it flows. And he gave of himself generously and enthusiastically to his biological son, Yanai, to his daughter, Sasha, to his co parents, Karen and Don, family members, friends, students, and all those who are lucky enough to know him and to be inspired by him. Today, we wish we didn't need to be here. And yet, there is no place that we would rather be but beside our beloved David, offering him the loving funeral that he deserves. For we know the importance of the mitzvah of accompanying David to his final resting place. We learned it from Abraham, who in this week's Torah portion puts his all into making sure that his beloved wife has a funeral filled with dignity and respect. We are here today because, like Abraham, we wish to honor the life of a person who left an indelible mark on each of our souls. Whether we participate in person or virtually, each of us is privileged to offer one final act of love for our beloved David. And our presence here today matters so much. Right now, we are going to lower David to his eternal resting place as we offer some words of prayer. We do this in order to in order to give him this beautiful send off filled with love, filled with appreciation for the person who he was. Hatzor Tamim Holo, Kikol Derachav Mishpat El Emona Ve'in Avel, Sadiq V'Yasharhu, Hatzor Tamim B'chol Po'al, Miyomarlo, Matif'al, Hashalit B'mata U'b'ma'al, Mimit U'machaye, Marid Shoel, Ya'al. God, you are a rock, perfect in all your deeds, a faithful God and true, upright, and just in all your ways. Who can question God's actions? The Eternal One governs what is above and what is below, giving life and ordaining death, bringing down to the grave, and granting eternal life. Hatzor tamim b'chol ma'aseh, mi yomarlo, ma ta'aseh, ha'omer v'oseh, chesed kina lanu ta'aseh, ובזכות בני אחד כסה, הקשיבה ועשה. God, you are patient and slow to anger. Have mercy and take pity on us, young and old together, for you are the source of all compassion and forgiveness. Sadiq b'chol derachav, chatzor tamim, erech alpayim, u'ma'ale rachamim, chamolna, chusna, alavot, uvanim, ki lecha adon haslichot, v'harachamim. God, the lifespans of all people are in your hands. Do not allow us to be forgotten from this world, but may your caring eyes always be upon us. Adonai Natan, v'Adonai L'kach Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. God has given, and God has taken away. Blessed be the name of Adonai. God, being merciful, grants atonements for sins and does not destroy. Time and again, God restrains anger and does not allow wrath to be consuming.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot ינעלני נפשי ישובב ינחני במגלי צדק ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו גם כי אלך בגץ על מוות לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני תערוך לפניי שולחן נגד צורריי דישנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים אדוני רואי לא אחסר אדוני רואי לא אחסר. These familiar words of the 23rd Psalm, which I have just chanted and which in a moment we will all read together on page 5 in your booklets. These words speak to how God shepherds us through life. David never questioned that gift of God's presence in his life. But David too embodied that divinity in the way in which he shepherded all of us who knew and loved him. The way that he guided us, the way that he guided his students, the way that he guided every person with whom he came in contact. Even those that he never met, but only read his words in print, felt touched by his soul, felt touched by his love, and felt touched by his genuine love for all of humanity. So as we read these words, as we share in this psalm, I invite you, if you wish, each and every time we speak of God in this psalm, think about how David embodied that for you. Think about how David guided you in green pastures. Think about how he restored your soul and led you through straight paths for his name's sake. I know that all of us who are here today and all of us who are watching here on Zoom were touched in some way by David. I know that when I first met him many, many years ago, we became immediate friends. And that his words touched me, touched you, and touched all of our souls. Together we read, Adonai, you are my shepherd. I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside the still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me in straight paths for your name's sake. Yea, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever. All of us have been anointed by David's presence in our lives. And for that, and that overflowing cup, we are eternally grateful.
Adonai, Adonai miyagor go'alecha, miyishkon bahar kodshecha. Adonai, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be taken, ever be shaken. From a young age, it was clear that David was special. Not only was he incredibly intelligent, a born leader, but he was also compassionate and kind. He was a mensch. David's accomplishments were profound. A prolific author, a brilliant path-breaking scholar who was capable of meeting and talking to people on their level, who could communicate his love of 20th century European, Russian, and Jewish history and culture with beauty and passion. David Shneer was fluent in 7 languages with proficiency in a few more. He was a highly acclaimed speaker and presenter who appreciated Jewish culture and traditions both within Israel and throughout the diaspora. David had the ability to move comfortably and authentically from one Jewish sphere to another, to develop deep relationships and inspire ultra-Orthodox and progressive Jews alike. A deep thinker and an active listener, He took the time to appreciate the different customs and traditions present within the Jewish community and beyond. As a professor, David was not only a skilled educator, but also deeply committed to his students and his school. He had the ability to uplift his students. When they had doubts, he encouraged them and helped them to see the talent, potential, and holiness that he saw in them. In so doing, he changed lives for the better. David also changed countless lives through his work co founding the first national LGBT organization, Jewish Mosaic. His work as vice chair of Keshet and through books such as Queer Jews, which demonstrated what it could look like to be unapologetically queer and Jewish, and why it was so important for the Jewish community to embrace every single person for the blessing that they were. Through his holy work, David, along with Karen, along with Greg, along with so many others who are here today virtually and in person, helped many people of all gender identities and sexualities to feel more comfortable coming out and finding their place in the Jewish community at a time where they weren't sure they had one. David touched more souls than we can possibly know. But the people who he impacted the most were those closest to him, the family he was born into and loved dearly, and the additional family members that he chose. David loved many things: learning, teaching, and mentoring, traveling, singing, and writing, to name just a few. He found joy in nature, yoga, bike rides, and Yiddishkeit and big, loud Russian symphonies. But there was nothing more important to David than his family. He showed his love through his radiant smile and his outstretched arms, through his sincerity and his generosity and authenticity. His love that was unconditional, passionate, and full of joy. Though our beloved David is no longer among the living, we know that he lives inside of each and every one of us, of all people who are changed for the better through having known and loved him. This week's Torah portion marks the end of Sarah's life, but it also includes Abraham's death. The Torah reads that Abraham breathed his last, noting that Abraham was content and satisfied when he was gathered to his kin. How could he be content? Some sages ask. God had promised him so many blessings that had not yet been fulfilled. The sages argue that his satisfaction came in knowing that he took risks and he lived his truth. Even when it was challenging, he lived in accordance to his moral compass and his sense of purpose. He died without regrets, knowing that he might not see the end of the story, but that he had certainly contributed to creating the world that he wished to see, a world that was more inclusive and loving and full of justice and mercy. He was grateful for all the blessings that he had seen in his lifetime, for all the sacred connections he shared with family, friends, and extra family members that he chose. And today, we mourn that David was taken from us far too soon. With so much to live for, so many melodies left unsung. But let us also be satisfied in knowing that David lived a fulfilling, vibrant life, that he lived according to his moral compass and his sense of purpose, with all of his integrity, that he gave his all, and that his 48 years within them, he unquestionably made an immeasurable impact on individuals and the Jewish community as a whole. The world is most certainly better because he lived in it. Now we're going to take some time to hear words and memories and reflections from some of the people who knew him best, starting with his parents, Jim and Diane.
If some of you are wondering why the, is that better? Yeah, I shall. Is that better? Okay, thank you. if some of you are wondering why some of us are wearing these purple kippot, they didn't used to be purple. They used to be blue, and they were all from David's bar mitzvah. David grew up in Palos Verdes on the other side of the hill with his brother Rob, three cats, a dog, his double bass, piano, clarinet, and trumpet. He attended UC Berkeley on a merit scholarship, and it was during his first year there that he came out to us as being gay, which in the moment was devastating news. During pursuit of his doctorate at Berkeley, he served as the director of education at Sha'ar Zahav Synagogue in San Francisco, one of the very first gay and lesbian synagogues in the country. At our 25th anniversary party in 1994, David announced that he had met the love of his life. And when our friend Jack asked him what her name was, he replied, "So what makes you think it's a she?"
Excuse me, I have to break in.
Sure.
It wasn't Jack, it was Jerry. They're just
No, it
telling
was
me.
Jack. Seriously? So I've been wrong for 26 years? Only this time for you, Jack. He married his love of 26 years, Greg Drinkwater, in a religious ceremony in 1996 at the Berkeley Amphitheater, officiated by our cantor, Sam Radwine. In 1997, a Bay Area lesbian couple, Kathy Simon and Imbal Kashtan of blessed memory, asked David to be the father of their child, and in 1998, our grandson Yanai was born. In 2004, David and Greg's longtime friend and collaborator, Karen Aviv, decided to have a family and to co-parent a child. And in November of 2005, Alexandra Meirav Drinkwater, Sasha, our first granddaughter was born. David received his PhD in history from Berkeley in 2001, which started him on his 19-year-long academic career. As I continue, I want you to keep in mind that for 15 of those 19 years, David had the brain tumor that eventually ended his life. He spent the first 7 years of his career at the University of Denver, where he eventually became the director of Judaic Studies. In 2008, he joined the faculty of the University of Colorado at Boulder as the director of Jewish Studies, transforming it into a vibrant organization offering bachelor and master's degrees and enrolling approximately 750 students each semester in Jewish courses. He also raised millions of dollars in donations to support Jewish education at CU. After his successes with that assignment, in 2016, he became chair of the Religious Studies Department. On April 3rd, 2013, he was named the inaugural appointee to the Louis B. Singer Endowed Chair of Jewish Studies. And I clearly remember two people on the dais with him that day. Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomi, the founder of the Jewish Renewal Movement, who as a result of his friendship and respect for David, willed his archives to CU. That legacy became the first collection in the post-Holocaust American Judaism Archive, of which David was the first director. The other individual present was Jared Polis, who called Greg last Thursday night to offer his condolences. Jared is currently the first Jewish and the first openly gay governor of Colorado. David was a distinguished lecturer for the Association of Jewish Studies, the faculty advisor for Yiddishkeit, and with Greg, the co-founder of Jewish Mosaic. David enjoyed travel both for pleasure and for the work he loved. He lectured at dozens of American colleges and universities, institutions in Israel, Australia, South Africa, and in many European countries as well. He also maintained a travel blog, which he called the Radical Jewish Traveler. He wrote for the Huffington Post, the Rocky Mountain News, the Denver Post, publications dedicated to Jewish life and culture, including My Jewish Learning, Forward, which just ran a wonderful obituary, Pockenträger, Juicy, and Next Book, and contributed articles to various encyclopedias. He was also the co-editor-in-chief of the Journal of Eastern European Jewish Affairs. His book, Through Soviet Jewish Eyes, Photography, War, and the Holocaust, which won the 2013 Schnitzer Prize of the Association for Jewish Studies and was a finalist for the National Jewish Book Award. It looks at the lives of 24 Soviet Jewish World War II military photographers. In the fall of 2011, the Traveling Museum exhibit, which he co-curated through Soviet Jewish Eyes, debuted at the CU Art Museum in Boulder, and then went on to the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York, the Holocaust Museum in Houston, the University of Louisiana's Museum of Art, and the Illinois Holocaust Museum in Chicago. David's book, Yiddish and the Creation of Soviet Jewish Culture, was a finalist for the National Jewish Book Award. With Sasha's mother, Karen, David wrote, contributed to, and/or edited the books Queer Jews, American Queer, and New Jews. And he and Greg edited and contributed to Torah Queries, a collection of 54 essays, each of which looks at the Torah portions through an LGBT lens. David's latest book, Grief, the biography of a Holocaust photograph, which he wrote at the invitation of the Oxford University Press, explores the history of a single World War II Soviet photograph. It reached bookstores in August. In the 4-page long gratitude section of his book, he thanks each of the doctors who cared for him and thanks them for keeping him alive long enough to finish the book. David loved to sing. He was a member of the Berkeley Chorus and the Denver Gay Men's Chorus, and with his longtime friend Julia Eisenberg, he developed and performed the 70-minute-long two-person multimedia show called Art is My Weapon, the radical Jewish life of Lynn Yaldati, the woman whose life and impact was the subject of the book that he was working on when he died. This morning's obituary, published by the Jewish Telegraph Agency, really conveys a sense of what their performance was like and what he was like. In 2011, David and Greg attended an LGBT conference hosted by President Obama in the White House, and with Greg took a photo with then Vice President Biden. He would have been so incredibly pleased with the outcome of last week's election. We have received many thoughtful notes of condolences in the last week, but what has brought us to tears were the many posts from friends, colleagues, students, ex-students, and others about how David's conversations, mentoring, lectures, and writings affected their careers and their lives in always positive and in sometimes very profound ways. In short, he was above all else a true mensch whose life was much too short, but very well lived.
So I'm David's mom, Diane, and I'm just going to tell a few memories, thank you, of the David that I knew. From the day David was born, he was an easy child. He didn't cry much and he loved to cuddle. He let our cat, Pythagoras, drink spilled milk off his face and didn't utter a sound. By 6 months, we knew he was extraordinarily bright. At 3, he announced to us that God lived in Oregon. Why, we asked. He showed us a map. He pointed to Oregon, above California, said God is up there, and Oregon is up there. Therefore, God lives in Oregon. David was 3 when Rob was born, and things were not too pleasant. I asked him to watch Rob when I was changing his diaper on our bed. When I came back a minute later, Rob was on the floor crying. David explained that he did watch him. He watched him roll right off the bed. I'm sure unbelievable to all of you, he was a very shy child until fourth grade, when his teacher, who really changed his life, Mrs. Stouffer, told us that the three of us had to work together to encourage him to speak up, to raise his hand, to talk to people, and become a leader. She was his teacher again in fifth grade. She told us that year, we've created a monster. That year, he was Hamlet in the class play. Only half a Hamlet because the role was too much for one child. David got to pick, and he wanted the second half so he could kill everyone. Here's a picture that I got from his friend Leah. This is Leah over here, and over here is Nitin, who is back there. And we'll pass this around so everybody could see David as our Hamlet. Pass that around. By high school, he was an outstanding student and class leader. His dream was to go to Harvard, but they rejected him and he was devastated. At that time, he was the president of the Math Honor Society, and at the final meeting, he had to make a speech. He told the students about the rejection and said he would not let that define him or destroy him. It would be the push he needed to excel somewhere else. And so he did at Berkeley and for the rest of his life. When he came out to us at about 20, I was shocked. He had so many girlfriends, some of whom are here right now. And it never crossed my mind that he might be gay. He asked me why I was crying, and I told him it would because he would never have children. Well, he said, what makes you think I won't have children? We have Yanai, we have Sasha. He was right. When he met Greg, we had a few difficult times at the beginning, but David knew absolutely that Greg was the love of his life. The two of them were a team, always there for each other. We are so proud and appreciative. I got mine.
This one's used.
Of all Greg has done. He's a son to me. We are blessed to have this amazing, wonderful, crazy family.
You wanna speak now? Okay. So we're going to hear some, after those beautiful words and memories that we just heard, I'm going to invite up David's brother.
I'm Rob. Thank you. I got a couple comments on my shoes today. By the way, for Zoom, I don't know if you can see them, the red shoes. Not exactly typical funeral attire, but we okay? The shoes are a tribute to David. That's better. I saw the Denver gang 2 or 3 times a year, probably on average for the last 10 or 15 years, and I cannot remember a single time I did not see David wearing his red running shoes. Didn't matter where we were going, casual, formal, the red shoes were always on. So that's why I'm wearing the red shoes. There's 2 things I want to share. One is a childhood memory, and the other is some details of conversation I was able to have with David last week, right before he passed away. I'll start with a story. As everyone knows, and as my parents just mentioned, David loved to travel, and I think a lot of his love for travel originated from when we were kids, as we were very fortunate to do a lot of family vacations all over the world. thanks to Dad's frequent flyer miles. We got to go all sorts of places for free. It was pretty cool. I loved them. I mean, obviously, I loved seeing all the different places we went to, but also for me, it was just the whole idea of getting away from the day to day, getting away from school, which I hated, and getting away from just the normal routine that David and I had, which, as you heard, started with him watching me roll onto the floor. For years, I was the annoying little brother, and he was the abusive big brother. And that was our relationship for many years until we got older. And obviously we got past that. So with this one memory, this is a trip to Spain in 1991. So I was 16, David would have been 19, and we actually stole government property together. It was quite the bonding experience. So we were in Spain in a small medieval town called Toledo. It's just, if you can picture it, it's this medieval town, tiny, narrow streets, cobblestone streets, lots of history, beautiful cathedrals, military things. I mean, it was just amazing city. It's still one of the best places I've ever visited. So with all of that, we're walking down the street one day, just kind of doing the tourist thing, and we passed this will sound so stupid, but we passed this no parking sign on someone's garage. And I thought it was the most beautiful sign I had ever seen. The color, it sounds weird. It's a beautiful sign, let me tell you. It's got blue and yellow and red. It's a very pretty sign. We don't have any street signs in the US that are that pretty. So I said to David, I'm like, I love that sign. Don't you think that's cool? And he pulled me aside out of earshot of my, no, can I finish my story? We were all together, but David pulled me aside and he said, let's steal it. It was the middle of the day, so it probably wouldn't have been a good idea, but he said, let's come back when it's dark and steal it. You're my big brother, I'll do whatever you say. So later that night, after it got dark, we told Mom and Dad we were going to go out and take a walk, which I'm sure they thought was strange. I grabbed my old, remember those red Swiss Army knives? I had one of those, which I guess we were allowed to travel with back then. But so we took the Swiss Army knife and we told them we were going for a walk, and we went back to the sign. And while I was the lookout, David took the Swiss Army knife and unscrewed the sign, handed it to me. I shoved it into my jacket, zipped my jacket up, and walked back to the hotel. No problem. There weren't video cameras back then. I don't think we'd get away with that today. So we get back to the hotel, and as we were walking, we were trying to decide, well, should we tell Mom and Dad what we did? Well, we probably should. They're going to see the sign at some point. So we came back very proud, kind of like when a cat brings home a dead bird or something like look what we found. And I think they were floored and appalled at our behavior. And they let us keep it. I think they probably thought through the alternatives. None of the alternatives were probably going to be very good. So I hid it in the bottom of my suitcase. It wasn't a very big sign, kind of like that. Hid it in the bottom of my suitcase and took it home. And it's still hanging in my parents' house with all their some of their other items they've collected in their travels. And they told us years later, when we were talking about the sign, that they were absolutely appalled at our behavior, but they decided to let it go because they were so happy to see us doing something together. So but it's pretty cool. It's still there, and we were over at the house last night, and I came downstairs to look at it, and it's a nice memory for me of David. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to share was what David and I talked about last week. And a few of us were fortunate to have some one-on-one time with him before he passed. Unfortunately, he was already sedated at the time, so we don't know if he could hear us. Obviously, we hope that he did. We don't know. I'm going to think that he did, so it'll make me feel better. I actually typed it out because I have a feeling I'm not going to make it through it. So I'm not going to share the entire conversation with you, but a part of it I did want to share. So I'm just going to read that. David, you've been my role model since my earliest childhood memories. When we were growing up, although we fought a lot, all I ever wanted was to be like you. I wasn't really into music, but I joined the high school orchestra and marching band because you did. I hadn't planned on going to UC Berkeley for college, but I decided that's where I wanted to be because you were there. And I definitely did not dream of becoming an academic, but I joined a PhD program because you did. And there are dozens of other examples that I could share with you. It wasn't until I was 22 and completely miserable in my PhD program that I realized that I needed to stop trying to follow in your footsteps and instead forge my own path. You've always been an incredible human being. Your intelligence, generosity, charisma, warmth, and incredible talent for pretty much anything you tried to do, as those who know him can attest to, set an incredibly high bar for me to aspire to. As a kid, I got to admit, at times it was demoralizing for me. You were so well-rounded and so perfect in all aspects of your life that at times I felt like Jan from the Brady Bunch. Gen Xers get the reference, so okay. But brotherly jealousness aside, you've really demonstrated to me how a rich, full life is supposed to be lived. I will always regret that I didn't tell you any of this until now. But I promise you that I will work harder to live the type of life that you have lived and always use your memory as inspiration to make life decisions that you would be proud of. I love you.
That was so beautiful, Rob. And we were taught that before a person dies, they can hear. They can take in all the words and the prayers and everything that we say. And so I too believe that he heard you. He heard every word you said. I'd like to invite up his biological son, Yanai.
You got me going already, Rob. Oh, falling off. There we go. I doubled up just for good measure. David gave me the gift of life in an extraordinary way. I'm so lucky to be part of his bold, inclusive, unconventional, loving family. Throughout my life, and especially as I grew older and grew closer to him, David has been a beacon and an inspiration for me. Being in graduate school now, a conversation I often have involves future careers. Friends like the idea of being an academic in some respects, but worry about, quote unquote, that life. I think the phrase that life conjures up the idea of letting work invade your life, of giving up on your personal life, of producing work that only a tiny handful of people will ever read or care about. And then I think about how David lived that life. There was no invasion. He let his passion for inclusion, for family, for love, for Jewish culture and history, for exploration, for pushing boundaries guide all of his life. Over the past week, as I've heard other eulogies and read testaments to David, I've learned the extent to which his scholarship not only transformed his field, but also transformed so many individual lives by showing people how to enthusiastically embrace both their sexuality and their Judaism. Being a field and life-changing scholar is enough for one person, Dayenu. But of course, that's just the beginning with David. Whenever I spent time with David, he was fully present, loving, curious to learn about what I was up to, proud of me for being me, often very goofy, never pretentious. It was also a joy and privilege to witness his relentless love for Greg and Sasha. A loving father and husband, Dayenu. But of course, there's more. I also got to spend time with David when he was in adventure mode, hiking in the New Mexico Rockies, ziplining in Puerto Vallarta, and walking around St. Petersburg shortly after he had been released from questioning by the FSB, successors of the KGB, who were suspicious of his fluent Russian and who did not believe that his friend had climbed over a barbed wire fence into the secured port area so he could meet us with a bouquet of flowers just out of love. I was surprised at how David and Greg had friends in practically every city we visited, and how some of them thought it wise to climb over barbed wire to give them flowers. But of course I shouldn't have been. Dayenu. But of course it wasn't enough to inspire people with his groundbreaking work. David lived his principles and values as much as anybody I know or have known. In 1997, when he was only a few years older than I am today, he and Greg agreed to become my bio dads. He courageously jumped into this radical and as yet not fully defined relationship with 2 feet and gave my moms, Inbal Kashtan of blessed memory and Kathy Simon, the gift of a family at a time when same-sex marriage was not recognized. David worked so hard to bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. On Saturday, I joined in one of the many spontaneous expressions of communal relief and jubilation hours after Biden won. Thankfully, I was able to feel joy there, along with my grief. The thing I desperately wanted in that moment, as the mayor of Oakland drove by in a flaming snail car, was for David to get to be there in the celebration, dancing in his red shoes. David, all those postcards I'm about to write to voters in Georgia, they're in your honor. I will miss you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yanai. And I know there are so many people and there's so many memories and there's so many stories to share. And Diane has a letter written by David's good friend, Leah.
Leah lives in Minnesota and couldn't get down here today, but she really wanted me to read this to everyone because she loved him so much. Thank you. My name is Leah. David has been an enormous part of my life for more than 42 years. I don't remember meeting him actually. If I had to guess, I would say it was probably the first day of first grade. Yes, it was. Once we met, that was it. Like magnets, we were best friends. It didn't matter how much we were teased and bullied for being a boy and a girl. We had each other, and that's all we wanted. We walked to school together pretty much all through elementary school, played at each other's houses constantly, ate meals together, sometimes breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and talked on the phone incessantly. My mother always laughed because even into high school, we would spend much of the day together, then take a break for homework and dinner before calling each other up for about 4 hours a night. I didn't know that. As we wound our way through junior high and high school, we didn't spend as much time during the school day together, but the friendship and the phone calls remained. From day one, David was my touchstone. Everything that mattered, I shared with him. When I needed support, he held me up as I did for him. When I wanted to celebrate, he literally jumped on the sofa with me. We had a kind of relationship shorthand. We always picked up right where we left off. Having David as my best friend was a certainty in my life. It comforted me and challenged me and gave me so very much. I hope he felt the same. Once we went to college, we adjusted to long distance. We never discussed it. We both knew that our relationship would last forever, regardless of distance and different life journeys. Once he decided to become a professor rather than a rabbi, even though I distinctly remember him wailing about hating Hebrew school, I found myself bursting with pride every time I was able to witness the way he handled symposiums and lectures. He was so knowledgeable, but had this way of raising everyone else up to share in his knowledge. His career choice, life choice was so perfect for him. And then he met Greg, who shared his love of travel, but also accepted that David needed to share his passion for knowledge and history with as many people as possible, which had the unfortunate side effect of frequent work trips. I think perhaps it was Greg who realized that David had too much to share and was too special to keep all to himself, so he decided to share him with all of us. As life goes sometimes, David and I were unable to be present for some of life's biggest milestones. We could not attend each other's weddings. He couldn't attend my father's funeral, and now I can't attend this. While I think one day I'll be able to roll my eyes and tell myself that obviously, of course, this is how it would be, for now I am heartbroken that I cannot share in the fond memories, love, comfort, and tears being shared by all of his friends and family, and offer my condolences in person to Greg, Sasha, Yanai, and David's entire family. I've read countless posts and emails and live chats from last week's funeral, and my heart bursts with all the testimonies from so many people saying how much David meant to them and how wonderful and unique and brilliant and helpful he was to them. I was always so proud of how he went through life, embracing opportunities as he did people, sharing everything he had to encourage or embolden or enlighten. I feel the tremendous pain being felt by so many, unable to comprehend how we have lost such a vibrant light so soon. I understand the heartbreak as friends and colleagues share how much he meant to them and how he made their lives better, and how they wonder how they will continue to walk paths they shared with him without him. I feel their pain because I had the honor and privilege to share almost my entire life with this remarkable gift of a human. I've always known how special David was. What I didn't know, and what I wish I didn't have to learn, is how my life will look without my friend, how my life will feel, and what it will look like without my touchstone. And here is a picture of David and Leah at their 5th high school reunion from Palos Verdes High, and we'll pass this around so everybody can see it.
Beautiful pictures and props. It's just extra touchstones of this special human being that we were blessed to know. And I'd like to invite up one last person, his good friend Nitin, to say a few words.
Thank you. Wow. Um, I'm not often at a loss for words. I wrote some stuff down and I'll get to it in just a minute. But something I've heard again and again that I've written down here is what an amazing person David was. I was fortunate. I've known David and the Shneers pretty much, they're my first memories. Growing up together in our great little neighborhood, people like Leah and others, the Shneer house was my second home, and our home was David's second home. Heard words from people who've grown up with him in his adult life about how touching he is, how thoughtful, how compassionate, how caring, how honest. And you know, one of my memories as I spent the last week thinking about what a fundamental part David has been was the game that myself, him, and Rob played it in Monopoly many, many years ago. David was so nice, he even let his sometimes annoying little brother play. And apparently I was really bad at Monopoly because back in the day, Monopoly, now they've got a new school Monopoly that's faster. Well, Monopoly would take forever. In 20 minutes, I was bankrupt. I was out of the game. Now, most 9, 10-year-old boys would make fun of their friend for losing all their money in 20 minutes and being out of the game. Not David. He was truly caring and compassionate. He actually offered me to, start the game over, much to Rob's chagrin, because Rob was winning. And I said no. I said that'd be fine. You two play. I could then watch them play for the next 5 hours. So definitely my mistake. So I also realized David was smarter than me. So not only was he nicer, smarter, and but also more thoughtful. So I am, as a child, things like that happen, and you don't really know what's important, what's the real meaning behind it. And to be honest, as a kid, being friends with David, you take it for granted that he's this very special person. And as we get older, we get gray hair, and hopefully we start to understand really what's important, what allows us to be who we are today and grow into who we are. And David was that person for me. My childhood memories are filled with him and his house and the neighborhood kids. We would all gather there, play things, whether it was, again, Monopoly, celebrate Hanukkah, jump in the pool, play on the first computer in the neighborhood. And I'm sure we broke it many times. I'm so sorry, but it was great. Now I have children of that age, and what you realize, it's those friends that give you the ability to live your life and be confident in who you are. Friends like David, who, he was born a special person. His innate nature is who he is. How I remember him back when we were in elementary school and junior high and high school is who he was, when he's 45 years old, when he has his own family, when he's a professor and traveling the world. And that's someone's inherent nature. He's truly thoughtful, caring, compassionate, wise beyond his years, always confident and always passionate and honest with that passion. He would do what he believed in, even if it was hard. And he was always supportive. As an awkward kid, which I think many of us were, having a friend like him allowed me to kind of live my life and not be afraid of what my best friend would think about me, because I knew he would always support me. As news of David's passing has kind of circulated amongst our childhood friends, the outpouring of support has been tremendous. You can hear from the letter from Leah. Many friends, I'm sure, are on the Zoom call right now and couldn't be here in person. The memories of our group and the love of the Shneers is not forgotten by anybody. Personally, I want to thank Jim and Diane for truly being second parents to me growing up, for Rob for being an amazing brother. You aren't nearly as annoying as we made you out to be, so thank you. Thank you all for accepting me, my sisters, my parents as part of your own. To Greg, Yunai, and Sasha for giving David the family he deserved. So thank you so much for that. And finally, David, thank you for being you. Thank you for giving us an example of how wonderful a person can be. I think today's day and age, that's an amazing memory to have, and something we will continue to learn from throughout our lives. I'm blessed to have known David throughout my entire life. And all I can do now is hope and pray that my children are lucky enough to have friends like him. If so, I'll be a happy parent. Thank you all very much.
We've heard so many beautiful testimonials, and I know that there are so many more stories and memories and words to be shared. Fortunately, we'll have many opportunities to do so, both at the Shiva Minions that'll take place tonight, tomorrow night, and Thursday night at 6 p.m., and for the many weeks and months and years to come, where we will share this incredible person that he was. But right now, we turn to our prayer, El Malay Rachamim, where we allow ourselves to call upon God to look after him under the shadow of God's wing. And I invite, if you're able to do so, to please rise as the cantor offers these words.
El male rachamim, shochen bamronim, hametzei menucha nechona, תחת כנפי השכינה. עם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת ציפור לב בן יעקב ודינה, שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסדר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to David Shneer, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen.
We turn to the words of our mourner's Kaddish, which is on page 8 and 9 inside of our booklets. And these words, as we know, do not speak about death or mourning at all. Rather, all they do is praise God. Right now, as we mourn for an exceptional human being, it might be hard to say these words of the Kaddish. And that's part of the reason that we are all here today, to uplift one another, to hold one another up in saying these words of memory for the first time in David's honor. I invite you to join with me. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'almad yivrach hirotei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon v'yomachon, v'chayei dekol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mivrach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudusha barichu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiram ve'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mama, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Al Mekamo Yavo B'Shalom. May David come to his eternal home in peace. And right now, all of us who are here, for those who are here virtually, I'm going to do this on your behalf as we begin. But all of us have the ability to do one last act of love for David, to use our loving, our caring, our knowing hands in order to give David the burial that is befitting such an incredible human being. If this is too painful for you, if this is too hard, that is okay. But if you're on the fence about whether you'd like to do this mitzvah, I encourage you to do it. Because I've never heard of anyone who regrets offering this mitzvah, although sometime I have heard of people who wish that they had done it. We use our hands and we use our hearts in order to allow David to be in his eternal resting place. We say, Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. You have given and you have taken away. Blessed be the name of God. Well, may the memory of David be a blessing as we mark that his essence will never leave our hearts and souls. There's lots of different ways in order to do this burial, and so if what I describe is different than your tradition, please do what is most comfortable and authentic for you. One of the traditions is to take a shovel and using the back of the shovel to pick up a little bit of earth and place it in his resting place. Because just as it is so difficult to pick up earth with this shovel, so too is it incredibly difficult to bury our beloved David. And then to turn the shovel over and 2 more times to place earth in his resting place. And there are 2 shovels, so I invite everyone, immediate family first, to come together and do this mitzvah. But I will start by doing it on behalf of everyone who is online virtually, everyone who so desperately wants to be in here in person and who most assuredly is here in spirit.
I'll remind you once again, we're going to be standing down there with cans of hand sanitizer. After you shovel, just come up to one of us. We'll give you a spritz. Also, over by this tree, there is a cooler of cold water. Please do help yourselves.
As David's family completes the mitzvah, we welcome you to also safely approach the grave and either side with either shovels and participate in this mitzvah as well. For those of you who are with us on Zoom, as this act continues, if you wish to unmute yourself and share your memories, share your messages of love to the Shneers, to Greg, to Yanai and Sasha, please do so, as this is being recorded and they will receive a copy of the recording. So please do so at this time. And thank you again for being present today.
From Lawrence and Carol in Sun City, whole Shneer family. We'll miss David tremendously. Love you all. We'll speak soon. Everybody take care. Bye. Wish we were there.
From Michael Barr and Gabriel Katz, we will miss David tremendously. He would come and visit us in New York whenever he would give a lecture at a Jewish institution and sometimes stay with us. We will miss him tremendously, and we always looked up to him and his accomplishments in life. I'm sorry for your loss and the loss to the world by David's passing. Michael Barr.
From Sheila Teitelbaum, my deepest sympathy to all of you. He was an unbelievable young man, and you all have much to be proud of to have been part of his life, as we all do.
Hi, I'm Eyal Gross from Tel Aviv. First met David in 2000 when I came with a group of Israeli LGBT activists to San Francisco, and he was one of our hosts. And I think we just all fell in love with him. I remember him mentioning Yanai, who was, I think, just probably born then, more or less. And then, fortunately, when he came to visit Israel, I used to see him. Last time was just a year ago. Had drinks with him and Greg. Actually, one of the times he visited, he actually stayed in the room from which I'm now speaking, and just stayed here in the extra sofa in the study. And I think, like everyone else, it was, as I said, as I wrote on Facebook, it was impossible not to fall in love with him because he had such internal and external beauty that shone through. And every time I met him, it was a pleasure. And I think during one of his visits a few years ago, he told me about his operation and the tumor, but he just looked so fine during the visit, so you could just almost forget about it and say, okay, he's going to be here. He looks fine. He will overcome it. And it was so sad to hear that he didn't. And he was so lovable and so special. And I think everyone already said why, so I don't have to repeat it. But I will miss him, and I'm keep thinking about his family, which I hope to see Greg and the rest of his family soon. And I will always remember him. And many friends here in Israel will always remember him and are very sad about it.
Glad to share this sad day with you, and hope you all are well and hope to see you again.
I'm Naomi. I'm in London. Greg, Dave, Sasha, Karen, I'm so sorry for your loss. Jim and Diane, I remember meeting you all together at Colorado Limud, and it was just such a joy to be with you all and with David, and to see how he brought everybody in to enjoy and to share everything he was doing. The Jewish studies, he made it so rich and fun. And he was not always teaching fun subjects, but he found the life in that. And that was incredibly powerful. It's a terrible, terrible loss. He's gone and left us far, far too soon, but he gave us all so much. And I keep thinking, what would he be thinking right now? Where would he be? It just feels really hard to imagine a world without him in it, but I am so grateful to have known him, and I'm so grateful to know you through him. I send you all so much love, and yeah, just wish you a long life, and just know whatever he was talking about, the thing that gave him most pleasure was talking about you, his family, his daughter, talking about his parents. That was the thing that gave him the most joy to discuss, the most pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, this is Eve Edmond from Temple Bethel. I just want to say, Jim and Diane, that I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. And I never met David. I wish I had. He sounds like he was an amazing, amazing human being. And I want to send love to you and all of your family, and know that I'm thinking of you and that I will keep you in my prayers. And it's such a privilege to be here today to honor David.
Does anyone else want to share before we end the Zoom session?
This is Mike in Honolulu Drinkwater, Greg's parents. We loved all of our time that we had with David and with David's family and with he and Greg's family. And we'll miss him forever. We love everyone. Thank you for inviting us to this.
I just want to say hi from Boulder, Colorado. It's Mark Soloway here, and Greg. Just can't. It feels so unreal. David taught 3 or 4 times at my synagogue in Boulder, and every time he just blew everybody away. And he had such a great time because he so enjoyed the questions and the dialogue and the conversation. and just really the way he responded to everybody who was in a position to be his student. His students became his teachers, and he had such grace and such warmth and openness and interest. And he and I got to be founding board members of Linwood, Colorado. I remember having lunch with him years ago, telling him about Linwood in London, or in England, I should say, and then him sort of taking the mantle. And we presented the idea to a community foundation and got some funding, and we kind of started Linwood, Colorado with some other people. And his vision and his articulation and his enthusiasm and excitement, and the way he just kind of ran with the idea and became so much a part of it. It was infectious and inviting and beautiful. He's just had such an unbelievable impact on so many people, certainly in the Colorado community, but obviously it goes way, way, way beyond that globally. And just it's devastating loss. And just so much love to all the family and friends and people who were so connected to his life. I just realized probably no one heard any of that because my microphone wasn't by my mouth. So I'm sorry, I just said a lot of nice things about David, but I'm not going to repeat it. Just
You were
miss him a
audible.
lot.
We heard
Oh, I
you.
was audible. Okay. Just suddenly saw my microphone hanging down my belly. So, all right. Loved him a lot. Missed him a lot. Love you all.
My name's Nick. We're joining you from Boise, Idaho, and I blame David for us being here lovingly. He was my PhD advisor and led me through an intellectual journey that we were still working through and with even till last week. We're editing some things together, and just wanted to share our love to Jim and Diane and Greg and Karen and Sasha. What he has done just for our family and our life. He and Greg were the first two to meet our oldest the day that we came home from the hospital in Denver when she was born. And like I said, he's responsible for so many wonderful things in our life, and just our thoughts are with you. He's touched us just like how he has touched everybody else in the world, and we love you deeply and tremendously, and everything that I will do will always be in his memory.
Hi, my name is Jenny. Here I am. My name is Jenny Kessem, used to be Jenny Epstein. I first met David and Greg and Karen at Berkeley Midrashah
Okay.
in Berkeley. Am I audible? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. We all taught at the Berkeley Midrashah together probably 25 years ago. And then David and Greg moved out to Denver around the same time I moved out to Boulder. And if I remember right, Karen came a tad later. I can't remember the actual order, but anyway, we all kind of descended upon Colorado around the same time. And I worked in Denver, and I would spend the night at their houses, Karen's house and David and Greg's house, so I didn't have to make the commute. And I ran a program for a social action program for Jewish teens somewhere around that time, and asked David to be on the board of that group. And really the thing I want to share about David that stands out the most to me is his yes. He, every time I asked him anything, and I know he's an incredibly busy person, his answer was always yes. So he said yes to being on the advisory board. And then one of our first events for that group, some other staff member couldn't attend at the last minute. I don't remember the details now. And David just drove out to Boulder and said yes, and was, like acting out skits with me to demonstrate Jewish ethics with these teenagers. And then even as recently as a month ago, a friend of mine is going through advanced breast cancer and started an oral chemotherapy, and she was nervous about it. And I knew that David had been on an oral chemotherapy. So I texted and said, hey, would you mind talking with her? And his answer was yes. And in that text exchange, he said that he was declining. And despite that, he still talked to her, as far as I know. And that was the last time I conversed with him. And I guess my prayer is that all the ways that David said yes to life, and all the ways I witnessed him saying yes to life, with having 2 children, with his marriage, with all the different things he said yes to, that he'll also say yes to death and embrace this next phase with as much of a yes as he has his days of living. So I'll miss you, David.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I've known David since high school. And I think one of the most comforting things that has happened in the past few days and hearing all these stories is that he never changed from the moment I met him till now. He was the same person, that wonderful, intelligent, kind, that smile with that little bit of mischievousness. He will always be part of my heart.
Alon, keep your book.
I don't want to put this on the floor, on the ground. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
So my friends, we are going to be ending this Zoom meeting. And we do appreciate all of you being here. If you had wanted to leave a message and didn't have the opportunity, please remember that there are Shiva Minyanim tonight, tomorrow night, and Thursday night at 6 p.m., where there'll be more opportunities to be able to share your love and your memories. And again, on behalf of the entire family, we want to just thank you for being here, showing your love and support, and joining us today for David's funeral. Thank you so much. And we hope you have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.